Just going to let the engine have a go again. How good is that? I really don't know where to start with this. What do you make of it? Here are a few options. Do you just see a BMW Z8 Coupe, or what might have happened if BMW had decided to build a tribute to the Jaguar E-Type? Or are you just thinking that it's a shame that a BMW Z8 has been sacrificed in a misguided resto mod cause? Come with me. Not a Z8 in here, is it? Confused? That's not the half of it. Listen to this. Just listen to that rumble and throb like an American V8. But listen, much crisper up the top end. Put all of that together and I bet you're struggling to get your head around it. I was. So let's start here. It's called the Smit Oletha, and I think you're gonna like it.
The Oletha is the brainchild of the Smit brothers, Willem and Kaess, both engineers, Willem having worked for both Tesla and Singer, and Kaess with a background in aerospace composites. In 2019, they jacked in their jobs to follow this passion project. They had always loved BMW's creations, but in recent years had become a little put off by the stuff coming out of Munich, so decided they were going to build their perfect sporting Beamer. Something that would have taken on the likes of the first-gen Porsche 911 GT3.
And I think we can all agree we wish that is something BMW had done 20 years ago. But of all the cars to mess with, the BMW Z8 is not it. Only 5,700 were made, and today they're worth more than they cost new. So instead, the Smit brothers looked further down BMW's model range for a donor car. And when they reached the Z4, they stopped. Yes, this is a BMW Z4 underneath. Congratulations if you'd already spotted that from the dash design. But there's not a lot of Z4 left. In fact, outwardly, the only thing that is carried over is the glass, yes, including this rear window, which looks entirely bespoke. What is bespoke, though, are all the body panels. Everything is carbon fibre, including this little, very well integrated rear spoiler. Down here, 3D printed tailpipes. In fact, there are over 100 3D printed components on the car. But 3D printing is everywhere these days, and I want to show you something even cooler. You see the wheels, which look like an old BMW design. They're actually milled from a single piece of aluminium. And if you think that's cool, let's have a look under the bonnet. Look, there's evidence of your carbon body panels, outer skin and inner frame bonded to each other. But really, look down here. 4.4 litre V8, and no, it's not BMW's in-house V8. Instead, it's the E92 M3's 4 litre V8 with a longer stroke, and now over 450 horsepower. Now the Z4 and Z8 are actually quite similar, in scale at least. Only a few millimetres different in wheelbase, and actually all the pickup points were very similar as well. The angle of the A-pillar here, the height of the belt line, which made it easier to make a Z4 look like a Z8. But let's not pretend this was an easy or straightforward job in any way. The guys said that the engine actually fitted okay, but everything else they had to do with it was a nightmare. So they had to change the engine's height in the car for various reasons, which are just too complicated to go into, and I don't really understand. But it meant that they had to put the scoop in. But it's been beautifully done, and there's only tiny bits of clearance under there. And then that engine's actual steering pump didn't work properly, so they had to look through the rest of the model range for another one that fitted within the packaging and did the job they needed to do. So the steering pump in this actually comes from an E60 M5, the V10 M5, and it's fine. I mean, possibly, because you've got quite a heavy clutch and you've got a reasonably meaty gear change, it's maybe slightly light, but actually for the sort of car this is sort of seen as a GT cruising spec, if you like. You can have it ramped up much more, but this one is definitely in road-going spec, and it feels lovely. It's got decent steering feel, good balance through corners. It feels really tidy, but mostly it's just about that engine. It's just fabulous. Right, let's down to second and give it a bit, okay? It's the reach of it that's so incredible, because you think this engine in your head, because it's so woofly low down, you think that's going to be it. It's just done all of that and it sounds brilliant. But then you get it up and above 3,000, so we're at 3,000 revs at the moment, and above 3,000 it really starts to come on. And then it sort of hardens and the whole tone and demeanour of the car becomes much more focused into this sort of point, and off it wants to go. But you've got so much of the rev range left. That's only 6,000. This revs to 8.5. And actually on roads this twisty, it's quite difficult to get it to those revs. But really, all you need is the mid-range, because it's muscular and sounds fabulous through there. This will give you some idea of the level of attention to detail that has gone into it. They ran the whole car through CFD for its aerodynamic, computational fluid dynamics. And what they discovered with the body shape was that it had 500 pounds, that's what, 220 kilos of lift at the back axle at flat out, at maximum speed. So high speed, but it was getting a lot of lift over the back axle. So they completely designed, developed and engineered their own rear wing. And yeah, you have to manually select it yourself. But then instead of having 500 pounds of lift, you have only 150 pounds of lift. So they've given it, relative to standard, 350 pounds, what's that, 150, 180 kilos of downforce from where it was. But really, this is like a big front engine GT. It feels almost, it's not quite Ferrari-ish because it hasn't got that scalpel sharp, super quick turn-in because it's a 20-year-old car underneath. But what is nice about that whole frame that's used is that BMW developed the Z8, which means that when they turned it into a coupe, they already had a very stiff body shell, and putting the coupe roofline in just made that stiffer, much, much stiffer. So it's a good platform for building everything from. So around corners, no creaking, no sort of flexing in the chassis at all. So it gives the suspension a nice platform to work from. Nor is it as snatchy and snappy as like a modern AMG GT. It feels, the driving experience feels a little bit more period than that, but not a lot. Because of course this is a resto mod that's not really a resto mod in the way we understand it, because it's based on a car, the Z8, that was already designed to look like an even older car, the 507 from the 1950s. Just gonna let the engine have a go again. How good is that? But as a drivable car at high sort of cruising speeds, there you go, stick it in sixth. The engine dies away, you're doing 70 miles an hour at 3,000 revs, and yet you've still got great response and torque. And yet it just feels muscular. It feels like a really well sorted 60s GT racer, like an AC Cobra or something. It's got that sort of a vibe about it, not the sort of driving manners, but the vibe of this car is very much that sort of, I think it's probably the exhaust and the engine that really do it, but they give it that sort of tone and sensation, and I love that. The more I drive it, you know, I came up here earlier and started picking small faults in it. I said, you know, the spring and damper at the back aren't quite talking to each other properly. It's all setup stuff, and I think I'd say personally I'd like a little bit more camber on the front wheels just to really sort of make it feel a bit more aggressive almost. But then I went back and thought, no, it doesn't need to be aggressive. It's enough that it looks like this wonderful period car and hits like a hammer and has fantastic suspension sort of composure and control. It feels so complete and so well engineered and so nice. It just, yeah, nice. More than nice. Just thoroughly engineered and developed. I know BMW gave them great parts to work with, but they've done some cracking stuff with them. So that whole thing about it feeling like a 911 GT3, as it's set up here, it doesn't quite. And actually, I think it's all the better for it. I think if they'd made it really tight and tied down, It would actually spoil it slightly as a sort of fast road package. With that noise, it's exactly where it needs to be. This isn't a resto mod like any other I've driven, because although it looks like an original Z8, it's not trying to recreate it in the way it feels or drives. No, it's trying and succeeding in doing it better. Unsurprisingly, it's a fortune, upwards of £330,000, but there will never be more than 100 of these. And yeah, I'd absolutely have one over an original.